March 11th, 2026. Greek city of Larissa. Mid-afternoon, a man points his camera at the sky and starts filming. He lives near a Greek Air Force base and has an old hobby, photographing military planes that land there. And that afternoon, he looks up and doesn't recognize what he's seeing. A tailless aircraft descends toward the runway with no visible pilot. It's a single wing shape like a dark stingray crossing the sky. Silent, enormous, different from anything that usually lands at Larissa. What he just filmed, without knowing it, is the plane the United States is using to find hidden targets inside Iran. Officially, this plane doesn't exist. The Pentagon refuses to even confirm its name, and the project was developed in such secrecy that for more than a decade, even US Air Force generals themselves didn't have access to the details. But all this secrecy is not by chance. It exists because 15 years ago, the United States was humiliated in a way that they swore would never happen again. Before we get to that humiliation, it's worth understanding what this plane can do, because that's where the story starts to get strange. It doesn't have a pilot. The one who controls everything is an operator back in the United States, often thousands of miles away from the plane. With the range to cross continents, it can operate in practically any place on the planet. And it can stay in the air for 24 hours straight. A whole day flying without landing. It flies so high, about 20,000 meters up, that from up there, the sky above it starts to turn black. You can see the curvature of the Earth. Space begins right there. Its range, according to estimates by American military analysts, exceeds 20,000 kilometers. To give you an idea, that's more than halfway around the Earth, and all of this without being detected by enemy radar. It is considered stealthier than the famous B-2 bomber. Stealthier than the F-22 and F-35 fighters, the stars of American military aviation. The press nicknamed this plane the RQ-180. And according to experts, it is the stealthiest aircraft the United States has ever built. Its function at its core is just one: to find things the enemy is trying to hide. Missiles, mobile launchers, underground bases, convoys moving at night. But the question that military intelligence all over the world has been asking since that afternoon in Larissa is not what this plane does. It's why it exists. And to understand that, we need to go back to a specific day in December of 2011, a day that forever changed the United States military strategy. It was December 5th. And on that day, a top-secret American drone was flying near the Iran-Afghanistan border. Its name was RQ-170 Sentinel. It was the most advanced spy drone the United States had at the time. The same model that months earlier had monitored Osama bin Laden's hideout during the operation that killed the Al-Qaeda leader in Pakistan. But that night, something went wrong. The drone, which was supposed to be returning to the American base in Afghanistan, began to descend. It wasn't shot down. It wasn't hit by any missile. It simply landed almost intact in Iranian territory. Days later, Iran explained what it had done. An Iranian electronic warfare unit blocked the drone's communication with the American base. Then, the Iranians tricked the plane's GPS system. They made it believe it was returning home to Afghanistan, when, in fact, it was actually descending straight into Iranian territory. American intelligence still suspects to this day that the electronic warfare technology used by the Iranians that night actually came from Russia. The American drone fell intact into the hands of the Iranians. One of the United States' most secret pieces of military equipment was handed over on a silver platter. President Barack Obama had to publicly ask for the plane back. Iran refused. And, as a symbolic response to the American request, an Iranian company announced that it would send toy miniatures of the captured drone to the White House. A direct mockery of the American president. In the following years, Iranian engineers took the drone apart piece by piece. They did what the military calls reverse engineering. They studied each component to find out how American technology worked on the inside. And in 2016, they presented to the world their own copies of the American plane. Iranian drones based on the technology they had stolen. It was one of the greatest technological humiliations in American military history. And it was at that moment inside the Pentagon that the decision was made. The United States needed a new spy drone. A drone that no country in the world could shoot down, capture, or copy. And that would be kept in such absolute secrecy that if anyone doubted its existence, they would have reason to. And the company that got the contract was Northrop Grumman, the same company that, decades earlier, built the legendary B-2 bomber. It won a secret competition against Boeing and Lockheed Martin and signed the contract in 2008. The development took place inside Area 51, the Air Force's ultra-secret base in the Nevada desert, the same place where legendary spy planes like the U-2 and the SR-71 Blackbird were born. The first flight was in August 2010 in absolute silence, with no announcement, no press, no photos. At least 9 prototypes were built before the drone entered operational service in 2017. Today, experts estimate that there are more than a dozen of these aircraft flying, all in absolute silence. And the strangest thing of all, the project was funded by the so-called black budget of the Air Force. This means public money, money from the American taxpayer approved by Congress, without most of the congressmen themselves knowing where it was going. It is estimated that tens of billions of dollars have gone into this project over the years. But the Pentagon managed to keep the plane out of the public eye for an entire decade. Until, in 2020, a photo appeared on Instagram. Taken by an amateur photographer, it was a strange silhouette flying high above the California desert, near Edwards Air Force Base. In that blurry photo, the world saw the RQ-180 for the first time. Within the Air Force itself, the engineers who work with the plane have given it bizarre nicknames. The most famous, Great White Bat, a reference to the shape of the aircraft and the fact that the first prototypes were painted white. But there's a second nickname, and this one is even stranger, Shikaka. The name of the sacred white bat that appears in the movie Ace Ventura 2 with Jim Carrey.
Shikaka.
The most expensive and most secret spy plane in American military history was nicknamed by its own operators after a comedy character from the 90s. The unit that operates the drone today, the 74th Reconnaissance Squadron, has a white bat on its official insignia. And the squadron's motto is a Latin phrase that means, "Access is granted." For more than 15 years, the United States has invested tens of billions in a plane that officially never existed. And officially, it had never seen combat. Until at the beginning of 2026, the wait was over. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a military offensive against Iran that would go down in history. The name of the operation was Epic Fury. In the first days, the Americans destroyed much of the Iranian High Military Command, the country's Air Force and Navy. The supreme leader of Iran himself, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in a coordinated attack inside his office in Tehran. For Iran, it was the beginning of an unprecedented military humiliation in the country's recent history. But in the midst of all these quick victories, there was a problem that the Pentagon couldn't solve: Iran's ballistic missiles. At the beginning of the war, Iran had almost 500 mobile missile launchers. And those launchers are a nightmare. For any Air Force in the world, because they don't stay in one place. Many of them are disguised trucks, painted to look like civilian vehicles, delivery trucks, regular transports. They hide in underground bases, come out for a few minutes to fire a missile at Israel, and disappear again before anyone can find them. This problem isn't new. The United States has faced it before. In the Gulf War in 1991, Saddam Hussein launched dozens of Scud missiles at Israel using Iraqi mobile launchers. The American coalition, with all the technology of the time, was never able to properly find and destroy those launchers. It was one of the greatest operational humiliations of that war. At that time, both sides were still fighting with similar weapons: men, trucks, radars. But in 2026, that symmetry no longer exists. To hunt this kind of target, you need something that, until 2026, the United States didn't have on hand during a real conflict. An eye in the sky that can hover over the enemy all day long. See everything that moves on the ground and not be detected. You need the RQ-180. The drone flies at 20,000 meters altitude, scanning the ground in Iran with a radar system called GMTI. This radar has a specific function: to detect anything that is moving on the surface, even from very far away. A truck driving on a deserted road at night? The radar sees it, a launcher coming out of hiding to prepare to fire. The radar sees that too. All of this in real time, and in any condition: day, night, rain, sandstorm. Everything it sees, it sends right away to the American command centers and to the aircraft on the mission. The B-2 bombers and the F-35 fighters receive the coordinates, and they are the ones who carry out the attack. The RQ-180, unlike the other drones, doesn't carry bombs or missiles. It has just one job: to find. In the first 24 hours of Operation Epic Fury, Iran fired hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel and at American bases in the Middle East. It was the largest salvo of ballistic missiles in modern history. For several days, the Iranian attack continued, but on the 8th day of the war, something had changed. The pace of Iranian launches had dropped to just 10% of its first-day capacity. The largest ballistic missile force in the Middle East, reduced to almost nothing. In 7 days. And do you know how that happened? In part because the RQ-180 was up there, 24 hours a day without ever being seen. Every time an Iranian launcher came out of hiding to prepare to fire, the drone's radar saw it. The coordinates reached the command centers in real time. And in a few minutes, an F-35 fighter or a B-2 bomber did the rest. Hundreds of missiles were destroyed inside their depots before they were even armed. Mobile launchers that, for decades, were considered almost impossible to hunt down were being located and attacked in the middle of the Iranian desert before they could fire. Of the nearly 500 launchers Iran had at the beginning of the war, more than 300 were destroyed. 70% of the entire force in just a few weeks. The same mission that humiliated the United States in 1991 in Iraq was accomplished in 2026 in Iran. But at this stage of the war, something happened that the Pentagon never wanted to happen. A failure. On March 11, 2026, the RQ-180 made a landing that put it, for the first time in 15 years, in front of civilian witnesses, in broad daylight, on foreign soil. That place was Larissa, in Greece, and choosing Greece on paper makes perfect sense. Larissa is just over a 2-hour flight from Iranian territory. It's a NATO base in a country allied with the United States. It has infrastructure, it has protection, and it has something even more interesting. Greece is one of the strictest countries in the world when it comes to photographing military installations. Tourists have already been arrested for espionage, simply for writing down aircraft tail numbers in notebooks. And the consequences can include long prison sentences. In theory, it was the perfect place to hide an invisible drone. But there's one detail that no one had noticed yet. In recent years, 2 new hangars have been built in Larissa, isolated from the rest of the base. They're too big to house the regular American drones that were already operating there. And why were they built? Neither the Greek nor American governments ever explained. Military analysts believe that these hangars were secretly built to accommodate the RQ-180. On March 11th, that plane had to land earlier than planned, in broad daylight, in full view of anyone who happened to be looking up. Military analysts suspect it was a technical emergency. Others believe that the war was so intense that the Americans could no longer hide it. When the local Greek press published the first photos, the reporters made an understandable mistake. They thought it was a B-2 bomber. The shape was similar. The size was similar too. It took a few days before military intelligence experts confirmed what the expert community was beginning to suspect. It was the RQ-180. Photographed clearly for the first time, landing during the day at an Allied base during an active war. The nickname came quickly. Military enthusiasts named the plane that appeared there the Lady of Larissa. Then we return to the story's start. That Greek man with the camera, filming a lifelong hobby, captured on video an image that intelligence services around the world had wanted for more than a decade. Russia, China, Iran. They all spent years trying to figure out what the RQ-180 looked like underneath, what sensors it carried, what the exact shape of the aircraft's body was. A Greek man in Larissa accidentally exposed everything in a video. In similar cases in the past, people who photographed military installations in Greece ended up being arrested for espionage. But with him, nothing happened. No Greek or American authority took any action. The video stayed online, spread around the world, and became the most detailed image ever published of the United States' most secretive drone. And the question remains, why did no one do anything? Probably because, by that point, the damage was already done. Any action would have drawn even more attention. But there's a bigger question, which goes beyond the Greek man and his camera. Why did the United States take such a big risk? The truth is that the RQ-180 wasn't built with Iran in mind. It was built with a much bigger enemy in mind. China. China today has thousands of mobile ballistic missiles, an expanding nuclear arsenal, and an army that's rapidly modernizing. And in a possible future conflict between the United States and China, the RQ-180 would be the centerpiece of the American strategy to find and neutralize that arsenal. Using the drone against Iran is, in theory, a waste. It's risking the country's most secret asset in a secondary conflict when in reality it should be kept for a war that hasn't happened yet. But the Pentagon accepted this risk. And that says a few things, right? It says that the war in Iran is more serious than the official statements admit. It says that the United States is willing to burn its most closely guarded secrets to win there. And it says, maybe, that the Pentagon knows that soon it will need an even more advanced drone. Something that is still hidden. That the world hasn't seen yet, because that's the logic of the American black budget. While the public knows about the RQ-180 inside Area 51, someone is already working on what's coming next. The Lady of Larissa has come out of the shadows. And now she flies every day over the skies of Iran. But the next white bat, the one we haven't seen yet, that one could be the real story. And that's what I want your opinion on. This kind of war where one side has invisible drones flying at 20,000 meters altitude and the other fights with disguised trucks hiding in the desert. Can it still be called a war? Or has it already become something else? Leave your answer in the comments. If this video helped you, share it with someone who also likes to understand these behind-the-scenes details, and subscribe to the channel to keep up with future analyses. I'll see you in the next one.